evening, and welcome to Technology Trends, a program about ancient wisdom and new technology. I'm your host, Steve Naj, and our guest this evening is astrocartographer Lance Carlisle Carter. So, what was your main interest or impetus for astrocartography?
Well, I got to tell you, back in the 70s, I was going to college, Foothill College, and I was giving a book report about this book right here called The Alphabet and the Ancient Calendar Signs. And so then for an anthropology class and beginning anthropology and such, and just so happened that the author's secretary was back in class just brushing up on cultural stuff, and she said, well, the gentleman that wrote the book is just a mile from here, and he'd just love to have some company. And so she sent me over, and he agreed to meet with me, and it ended up I would meet with him for about an hour for over, once a week for about a year. And it became such that I was able to get college credit for special studies in doing this, in the study of deciphering the alphabet. And so I was under guided supervision of a Stanford scholar. I was doing all my research in the Stanford libraries, using all these old books and such you'd never find anywhere else practically. And so I had basically, coming from an archaic point of view of these epigraphers have in the past, they look at this stuff in a very, in another point of view, and somewhat the terminology is different. Talking about this is they even get confused. They wonder, what word are you meaning when you say figure, mark, it's a letter, it's a sign, and so all of these things have to be really explained. And I learned about these things the slow, hard way as a hobby. So, after I retired, I said, well, I better get back to this and kind of, go on to this, because I'd pursued it since the 70s. That's over 40 years of trying to find the answer to this. And it's something that a lot of experts and scholars and linguists and epigraphists have tried to find out. Why does the alphabet look the way it does? Why did the characters look the way they do? Why are they in the order that they are in? All those things have been a mystery, and people that have contributed towards the investigation, they've been knighted and such like this, and the discovery of these the sphinxes at Serabed al-Qadim is what I'm going to talk about tonight. Is some of the earliest form of alphabetic writing, but maybe it wasn't alphabetic at first. Maybe it was astronomical. We're talking about something that we've looked at, but people have rejected it. The epigraphists have said, you know what, that's too mystical, or there weren't astrologers back then, were there? And but there were astronomers. And so then if we look at this, we look at the alphabet in the light of astronomy, we can start to see, well, what were they writing? They're writing signs. What are signs? They're marks, they're symbols. They're trying to they're defining something. They're defining something in the sky, and they're defining something which we've sort of lost. We see maybe dots in the skies, and and that's it. But if we were to say that's the only television we have, we'd maybe look closer. And that's how I made the discoveries I've made. The recent discoveries, these are within the last 2 weeks. I've come up with a decipherment of Sinai 345, meaning I know exactly where to find these symbols in the sky. I can show you. You will see them. There's all these other sphinxes that have all these inscriptions. They've been unknown, undecipherable. They're guessing at it. They're saying this is a ritual inscription. It's a prayer to Baalat. And so we can find out why these look the way they do. And not only that, we can find out why they have the certain orientation or the stance that they do. Maybe they're this way or that way or the other way. Why are some of them look differently? We might call them an LF, but it's got different looking faces. You know, it's supposed to be an ox head, but it looks simplistic or complicated. So all these things I want to try to share with you in a way that the amateur epigraphist or archaeoastronomer or such would be able to take it and take these studies and go with them where they will, because what I found is that not only is our alphabet based on the stars, but we know that the Chinese calendar is based on the stars. Mm-hmm. We know, and also, guess what? The Mayan calendar is also based on the stars. But the interesting thing is that when we first had the alphabet, it was probably borrowed by the Chinese and converted to their 10 stems and 12 branches. And also the Mayans used the same constellations in the same order for their day names. So what we have is an entire world system that uses these, not the same symbols, but the same asterisms in the same order. And so what this means, they can be used for counting, it can be used for navigation, it can be used for calendars, it can be used for all kinds of things that the ancient person really needed. And all of these things are going to be very evident. So let's please go on to the slides.
Did they basically connect the dots?
That is the whole answer. That's how the decipherment was made. It's by connecting the dots and just filling in the spaces. So
okay.
So this is the book, The Origins of the West Semitic Alphabet in Egyptian Scripts by Gordon J. Hamilton. It's the main book that I've used, and it's a book that I'd recommend for those who want to get into this study now. This is when the earlier decipherments I made is that essentially is that these characters are being fit over the stars themselves. So the ones in the background in Lower Nubia is the ones that is the human figure and the duck figure, and down below you see a scribe, and then I'm not showing us, there's more of the slide there, but so what's happened is that these symbols were being used in Lower Nubia, and they're also used in the Sinai. They're also found in Canaan, Palestine, and Israel, and they're just somewhat different. So what I'm saying is you can see that kind of in the left, the kind of water sign. That's the trick there, is to find a sign that looks the same and slap it over, and there's the answer. So that's how these decipherments are going. So if taking a look back, so that's Sinai 347 symbols being placed directly over a inscription, rock inscription tracing that is from Lower Nubia. That's in Egypt. So the Sinai has a direct relation to the Lower Nubian. And so here's another look without the text, and even another look. So now this is the bottom ones that I was showing you. And so what's happening here is that the name, the square on the left is the letter Beth, or B, and that kind of eye on the side is A, and the human figure there is an L. It's facing, it's got a loop in that way like a cane, and then there's the T over on the side. So these, the T is in Draco, and the square is Ursa Minor, and so those are, you can see right there. There's a Lower Nubian drawing. So, and you can see where now, taking just another step back, and then we seem to be in a loop here. Next. Okay, well, somehow we're skipped, but this is a picture of ox head over Lyra. And so what I'm trying to introduce here is that these pictographic symbols in early times were based on star patterns, and you can easily draw a lot of these characters over the star patterns themselves. That looks like a study I did for the Wadi El Hol LF. And let's see what we get next. Okay, well, that was the next one. We just talked about it. Next. Okay, so here's a bunch of the symbols from that book, and these are the Aleph symbols, the ox head symbols. You can see that these have a lot of different forms, but they all look like an ox head. So
yeah, but topographically they look the same.
Yeah, from a general thing.
Points, yeah.
So now, how these things are found is that a lot of times I have to look at the stars, their names, and okay. Now here is a picture of Lyra, and this is a kind of a general default configuration. So this is a modern configuration.
Mm-hmm. Now they connected, I'll say, connected the stars. They use the brightest stars always?
No, this is this slide here kind of shows you how I believe the stroke order of these characters could be found. Is starting with the alpha star is the upper left. That's Vega. Then you're going down, and so what we'll do is, well.
Yeah.
Some of these are out of order, it looks like. So there's the next stroke. No. Next slide. Keep going. Okay, so these are somewhat out of order, but you can see where these were. Not so fast now, okay? Okay, so I'm trying to show here is that each one of these lines connects a dot. The dots are stars. The lines are the characters, are part of the signs. Now, we call these signs, everybody calls them signs, like astrological signs.
The gentleman that taught you was a linguist and an anthropologist, huh? Or a historian, I would say.
Well, he was, and he studied in China and at Stanford, and he spent many years in China. And the way he found this, okay, so there's a picture of where Lyra lies in the stars. So it's sort of a reference, okay?
Okay.
Somehow this loop is gotten into. Could you please advance pretty far? Okay, so there's a letter LF drawn one way. Can you just keep going? Mm-hmm. There's a triangle. Okay, stop for a second. So basically, this is the idea here, is that you see the letter from the inscription in green, and you see the constellation of Lyra. So essentially what I'm saying is that these figures, these signs, are directly drawn over. So let's see what we got next. Okay, there's a close-up of that exact one. And there's that again. Okay, so there's a look at another look at a modern sign for Lyra, which is Wheeltarian's view. Okay, go on. Somehow we're caught up in a loop. Just advance as fast as you can.
Was the Aleph originally Phoenician?
Well, the name is Semitic, and it's West Semitic originally. And it means ox head, and it has other meanings like chief. And okay, those are the numbers, the HD numbers I use to find these stars. A lot of them are difficult to find because they have HR numbers, and so finding all these small stars is a problem. Okay, keep going. And looking at them. Okay, this one, stop it a second. So when you're looking at these things, this is proper motion. And so when I'm trying to draw these constellational figures, you have to look at it from a period of, I'm going from 2000 BC to maybe 1500 BC to 1000 BC, or maybe even 500. So I look at the motion, and then looking at, say, the bright star in the upper left is Vega, and you can see the line there. It's a huge amount of proper motion that occurs over 1,000 years. So basing these signs on astronomical, phenomena, the actual placement changes over time. And so what the investigation is going to have to cover is how do these symbols change? Should they change from as they transfer from one culture, language, or written form to the other? Okay, keep going. Okay, so keep going. There's more proper motion. There's a symbol for Lyra by Ray, Mr. Ray. Very creative way of drawing constellations. If anybody loves to draw constellations and make up your own, there's plenty of stars out there. Okay, and so these slides are not coming out right. Just keep advancing, please. Okay, there's another close look at some of those Aleph symbols that we just looked at. So you can see it's sort of the Yay we know today, but there's more of an ox head pictographic form, and these are, the hieroglyph on top of head of ox, F1. That's what the author, Gordon Hamilton, says that is the origin of these. It may be, but so let's keep going. Oh, no. Just keep going until you get past all this stuff, or just skip. Okay, this one, you just saw a couple of these. I'm trying to see if Taurus, these proto-Sinaitic or proto-Canaanite symbols fit over the symbol of Taurus, or the stars of Taurus. I'm telling you, they don't. People, even my teachers, suggested it doesn't fit. Nobody looked. They didn't put the symbols against the stars. I did. It took years. So let's keep going. There's another look. Okay, keep going. Okay, now I think that's polymarine. So there's a look at Lyra. So this fits right over an ancient symbol for Aleph. Okay, here's the archives part. We're going to go through this next one, sort of jumping through, because we missed a lot of slides. But
is that a kappa or a K or
no? It's an early A. So it's sort of, you see where, if you sort of scooted that middle part out towards the other way, it's sort of like this is how some of the early A's are done. So let's keep going. There's the ox head through the stars. You can see a big circle there. Let's keep going. And yeah. Okay, stop for a second. Remember, lyra means lyre. It's the musical instrument. So I drew a lyre up there. It's also, lyra is also the sign of the turtle. There's the turtle in lyra. So all these symbols, remember that the world rests on the back of the turtle? Well, it just so happens that's the turtle. Lyra is the turtle that the world rested on the back of, because 14,000 years ago, lyra was at the center, was the center of the spinning of the sky. So let's keep going. Another look at the lyre. Oh, there's an interesting form of it. Keep going. Uh-oh. Just keep going. I'm just giving you all these impressions so that you know exactly. Now stop for a second here. I don't know if you can go back one slide. Okay, that one right there, that's an Egyptian temple or an Egyptian house. These symbols are directly drawn in the sky. You can see them. They said, okay, where is this temple in the sky? Well, here it is. Why is it there? It's because it's Beth. Beth is sacred to the goddess. So we'll go more about that. Keep going to the next slide. Here is more of that symbol in a different way. Keep going. So these are all, this is the Hebrew square form. Here is the B forms that we know from, Roman. Keep going. Another B. Now here is the Beth, kind of the dipper form. Keep going. Now here's the square form. Here's the square with a door and a door open. And here is the another Egyptian form of it. Keep going. Here is the square form. Go back one, if you can. Okay, this is the square form that we see so much in these inscriptions. So this is the key to the decipherment of all these Proto-Canaanite and Proto-Sinaitic inscriptions. Let's go. Okay, here's the Chinese branch, a 6 over Ursa Minor. I told you these fit. The Chinese sky is a Proto-Canaanite sky. It's the Mayan sky. It's a living sky. If we could all see it, it's not something it's easy to see. I could admit that, especially with drawings like this. But I put on this show back in the 70s at the Fidel Planetarium with drawings like this, and I can say with a planetarium, it's like a half a circle, and you can see what's coming up over the sunrise and over the sunset. The problem with that is that some of these inscriptions go halfway or more across the sky, and to get a full impression, you really need a much larger planetarium, an observatorium that has got 3D effects, special effects, abilities to put these things out in a way that people can see them and understand them. It's been hidden in books. It's hidden you look at pictures that explain it, and it's hard to understand. It's like, oh, these pictures are hard to understand. So it's going to really take a lot of work. I'm only scratching the surface. It's going to take epigraphers. It's going to take scholars. It's going to take linguists to get into this. This is only the key. This is the turning of the corner. It's going to take people that know about this stuff to really make sense of all this, because what this study has opened up is a new way of looking at this. So let's continue.
You need to be a little more right brain when you look at these, and more creative.
Yeah, and I want to point out this dot here in the square. This is a star. It's 17 Ursa Minor. It shows up in all these old inscriptions of Beth, and so people ignored it. It's a real star. This is a configuration. They were astronomers. They were drawing star charts, and what's really amazing is that their sense of proportion is so great that you could use their symbols and draw them directly over star patterns, and which is, if we can get to the slides, next slides please. So here is some more of the Chinese. Let's keep going. I don't want to do Chinese today. Okay, so here's Gamel. That's a throw stick. This is why it's the throw stick. And there's many reasons. It's the camel's hump. Gamel means camel. What is calf? Calf means camel's hump. There's the meaning. When I showed all this to Dr. Moran, he was convinced that this was it. And it doesn't discount his theory of the correspondence between the names of the letters of the alphabet corresponding to the lunar signs. What I think happened is that the Chinese came across our system and were able to use this, and they just happened to make up their lunar system and just transfer all the names over to the, from the other ones. So here's some gammas in the Greek. Here's delta, deleth. I mean, here's some other form. Here's a delta form. Stop for a second on this. Here's the door form, a delta or delet. Keep going. Here's another look at it. So these, you can plot these out right out there. Now, these forms of it, these different forms. So what it's saying essentially is that these people, these astronomers, they were coming from different areas, different groups, different tribes. They all knew the configurations. It was well known throughout the world, that ancient world, from Egypt to Israel. And so they all had, stop for a second there and turn back one if you could. The complexity of some of these symbols is so easily explained when you see them in the sky. It's not, the rock they were riding with, kind of dragged a little too much. No, they were, they weren't goofing off on the chalkboard. They were drawing something that they wanted preserved. They wanted preserved for their kids. They wanted everybody in their tribe to know about this. And what's happened is that, now stop for a second here, is that here is Heth. This is the, kind of the fence symbol. And so we have Hercules here. So now if we look at some of these other symbols here, you can see how just adding a few stars to these changes the configurations dramatically. And then you say, oh, well, this is a different culture. No, these people were so close to each other, they said, I don't want my delta to look like your delta. I don't want your symbol to look like my symbol. And so they could draw these much differently, and through time, they could do this and be able to say, this is my form of drawing this. And when you see that these, coming across all of this, these configurations was not easy. But once I found the key, all of them became easy because they're all the same. They're all based on the same pattern. So what we're going through is the entire ancient alphabet with a lot of symbols. We're now here at the pole star. Stop for a second. There, right there, is essentially the North Pole. And so that is a Yod symbol. So keep going. There is another now Yod symbol right there. So keep going. Keep going. So essentially, you can find these symbols in the sky and be able to, I can, I think like a Proto-Canaanite, to be able to see this, it's a different perspective than most epigraphers have had from now on. And I've communicated with some of them, and they said, yeah, connecting the dots seems pretty good, but what does it lead to? Well, it leads to the decipherment of the alphabet. if we can get to, once we get to the end of these slides, you'll see that, so now there's a sakma, there's a fish symbol, there's another fish symbol, there's an AN symbol, another round AN, then, so we're getting towards the rest symbol, and so all of these strange configurations that have baffled the scholars for, for who knows how long, and some of these are rough drafts, I got to admit. I don't have all the coordinates on it, but these are being redone because of, now I have software that will calculate the exact positions of these stars back whenever that particular alphabet was invented. Here's, now we're coming towards the end. Here's the T for the, okay, so keep going. I think okay, stop. We're finally at the beginning. So where these inscriptions came from is that a big spot right in the middle called the Sinai Peninsula, where, and so just right in those, I can't show you exactly where, but this whole area, Egypt and Sinai, Palestine, Israel, all of those areas were using the same symbol sets in the same order before they were using it for writing. So when writing came along hundreds of years ago, they were using these same symbols, but they weren't using all of them. There's many more symbols than there are alphabetic characters.
Are the symbols, by any chance, in the same order as the seasons?
No, that's another problem the scholars have had. They've tried to connect these symbols to seasons, to the zodiac, to the elements. So they've done this, and afterwards you can say, well, this connects to that element, or this connects to the other element, and or this sign. My teacher actually connected them to him, but he wrote down there, he said, he could not find any logical correspondence between the zodiac and the alphabet. And other studies have not found any correspondence. So essentially, this system is connected with 10 celestial stems and 12 branches and different ways of writing it, and writing it all over the world in different ways. So, but let me get to this slide now. What we're doing here is going to Sinai 345, the right side. So you can see that there is a Egyptian hieroglyphic sign up on the shoulder, and you see on the down there is some glyphs. Those glyphs are what we're going to be looking at. So go. Okay. So this is nice. Gordon Hamilton has drawn this out so it really are clear to see exactly what is there. And even on the right-hand side, you can see where he's filled it in and given his impression. Next slide. Okay, here is the other side of it. Keep going. And there's that side of the Sphinx and those inscriptions. So these inscriptions is what we're going to start with. Now, so what I'm trying to say here is that you can see that I don't know if you can see, but if you look very closely, you can see that the letters, the green letters, align over these minor constellations. And so what's happened, now in the middle you see the square with the 4 big stars. That's the Dipper part of Ursa Minor, the Little Dipper or the Little Bear. So essentially we're looking at a lot of stars that most people wouldn't consider. They'd say, yeah, there's a bunch of stars out there. It looks like a cloudy soup or something. So let's go on. So what I've done here, is put the left-hand inscription directly over the right-hand inscription, directly over the star field. Now the chart shows exactly how these align. And so what I'm saying here is that when they were inscribing on this Sphinx, they knew exactly what proportion to draw these characters. This wasn't haphazard. They weren't writing a note. They were actually drawing symbols. They were drawing signs. They were communicating in a way that we may have forgotten about. They saw these lines one way. With the green, we'd read one way. But with the yellow on the other inscription, the same stars, but there's a few differences, isn't there? You look on the very right, and the loop, the cane loop, is in loops over, starting from the left down to the right, and that's the yellow one, and the green one does the other way around. But the square in the middle is always the same. Now you can see the kind of the pitchfork on one. And so what I'm saying, there's a relationship between these letters, and what we're seeing here is the stance of the characters in relation to each other is important only because of their positional relationship in the sky. And then if you transfer these into an inscription, which they've done, they've painstakingly done this inscription so that you can see, is this a coincidence? Do you think so, Steve?
That's interesting. That would be
Well, let's go on and look at some other ones. Okay, so here is, I forget the number of this one. I think it's 347. And so the big X on the plus on top is a T, and the line across is an N for none, and on the bottom is another T, so it stands for TNT. It's explosive. Next slide, please. So there it is, TNT, explosive, celestial Sinai, 347. The line is a line of stars. The crosses are crosses in the sky. We don't see them. Why not? Because they're pretty small. How do you get to see them? You have to go a place where there's no electrical lights for pretty far, and then
clear sky.
And then there's certain conditions in the sky. You can't see all the stars. You need to have some sort of way that, like a mist, to come in at certain times and cover up some of the stars, so that at certain points in time you're only going to see some of these brighter stars, and other days you'll see more. Then other times you'll see all. Okay, we're getting to, here is where they were all found in the temple section. And so you can see this is, now why does it curve like that? Well, why? Because the precession of the equinox and the pole star was changing, and this entire complex was lined up to align with the constellation Ursa Minor, and it just so happened that it was moving through the sky. So what do? You can't move the sky, you change your temple. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep on moving the temple, putting up new walls, new temples, and such in these turquoise lands. Keep going. Here's a look at what they look like today. It's just some ruins of some stela, where this is, what they found them, and this is what we're looking at. So,
whereabouts is this, in Palestine, or?
No, this is in the Sinai Peninsula at Serabit al-Qadim, and this is, we saw this one, and we saw this. Keep going. Okay, we're closing out. Keep going. Mm-hmm. And keep going. Okay, now this is what I thought we might need to see all this stuff. is, you know how a regular planetarium is. You got a circle, and you cut a line through the middle of it, and everybody sits on the floor, but
with their head up. Yeah.
Right, with your head up. But the thing is that
you basically have a hemisphere.
Yeah, a hemisphere. Now, what I'm thinking is that to really show these things, you really need a bigger sphere. You need more of a sphere like what I'm showing. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe even have chairs that pop up. And the thing is that it's not just the alphabet. It's the Chinese calendar. It's the Mayan calendar. It's all the Asian calendars. It's and so what I want to show basically is that we have a connection around the world. Oh, here's another tablet. Now, what I'm saying is, see, look at these tablets. What they are is they are basically transit charts. These are lines of constellations passing over them, passing through the sky at different points in the season. They only had one rock to write them on, so they used lines. They started out early using lined paper or lined rock. And so we'll go through and see a couple of these. Oh, 349. Okay, what I'm showing you here is that I just showed you that slide of 349, the previous slide. Can you go to that possibly? Okay, so you see that last line with the ox head? Okay, go to the next. Uh-oh, we got lost again. Go forward instead of back. Next one. Okay, so now you see that line is basically a part of a star chart. Mm-hmm. And now see that equal sign? Now that's sort of an interesting thing. It's like they call it a Tao, I believe. And sometimes it's written like that. Sometimes it's written down like two left-hand quote signs. So what it is that we have different ways of writing these signs, and the stance that everybody argues over. Why are they facing this way in this inscription and that way in another inscription? Well, because they're writing different things, and that Tao is being seen there. It has a meaning. I don't think I can change any of the interpretation that these linguists have. They may have better interpretations now with this information, but it's not such that I can't really contribute to that except by showing how those words or forms relate to the Mayan day names or the Chinese calendar or to the Indian, all these other calendars. We're not limited to these forms that we have now. This is very, very open, and so the research I've done and others have done, such as the other co-author of this book, David Kelly, basically...
I can hold it up for you.
He did a lot of research on this, on all the Mesoamerican connections, but I have more to add because he didn't have this connection. And what essentially it is that the Mayan calendar is really directly involved or based on the
star charts.
The star charts that were the same as our alphabet. So basically, at some point, they said, let's use these symbols, these 22, for a consonant alphabet. And those became stabilized. And for the use of these for alphabet or writing, but what it is that the Mayans, they only had 20 day names. Well, they didn't need as many because they couldn't see the North Pole as clearly from their latitude, I guess, but they just combined them. So if I can get, if the viewers...
the equator,
if the viewers want another show, please write, and so I could go on and share the other decipherments. There's so many of them. Was figuring out how many I'd need to do to explain this properly. I guess, 30,000. Then I looked at my folder of all the files I needed to get these half a dozen to a dozen already done. I had 15,000 files.
Oh, my.
And I'll tell you, graphic files eat a lot of room, and it's and trying to do all this, it's like I've been lucky because the technology has improved, the software has improved. SkyChart is an excellent free program, and the programmer is doing stuff for me for this research, and it's being able to advance this. He made a change a week or so ago. And now look at this inscription. This is a vertical inscription, and you can see that they were watching the transits and are drawing them in a different way. So we can't just say everything has to be written or it's this stance but I'm going to venture to say these are all pretty accurate constellationally, or you might say constellationally correct and asterism accurate. So what we want, or what I want, is essentially to get this information out. I don't think I'll be able to finish it all. Oh, here's one I wanted to show you. Celestial Sinai 350. So you see the inscription. This is what I'm working from. These little bits of black. I isolate it, which you see in the middle, and then I throw it right over onto the stars. Now, why is it they have that stance? That stance is because that is where the stars are. That's how it's. Why is that nun figure a little distorted from all the other ones? Well, because that's the way it's written. It's written that way because you see it that way.
2,000 years old or longer.
It's 4,000 years old, maybe, or it could have been some of these 1700 BC, some of them maybe 1500. They're not quite sure, but this one 362. Yeah, so these are the goodies right here that I wanted to share with you. The latest ones that I just finished in. Here's a close-up look at that. So, if I was drawing that, would you put the nose there right like that? I mean, this is so close. Please go.
So some of the hieroglyphs or the stelae are actually astronomical charts.
They are charts, exactly. And what's going to amaze you too is that there are Egyptian hieroglyphs that are astronomical charts as well. Now, we've known that the hieroglyphs are basically, they're astronomical figures and figures of other things, but number one, they're astronomical. You can, I've just read Orly Glasswasser, and she says that, they all say that, and so we have a lot in common. I mean, our alphabet has a lot in common with Egyptian, and the Egyptian culture, the Egyptian system, the history has gone into this, and when I get another chance at this, I'll show you how the exact evolution of the Egyptian forms of the letter Beth came about, how we can see Isis and Hathor and all of these ancient symbols right in the sky. The temples are made that way. Horus can be seen directly in the stars of Ursa Minor if you just connect the dots. And the Egyptians connected the dots. It's in their hieroglyphics. It's in their history of how they did this writing. What we borrowed from the Egyptians is going to have to be figured out carefully. I've shown some examples, but I couldn't show them all. And so what is essentially, this is a field that is basically opening up. You've seen over 100 different charts I've done. That's just a beginning. What I had to do, all those hundreds of charts, thousands of charts, in order to get to this point where these are so simple to decipher. But I got to tell you, to do this, I got a mind of a Proto-Canaanite. Oh, here's the Timnah stone. These are from Israel. So this is the ox head from this Timnah stone. Can you go back one? Okay, here is the ox head. Look at that. It's a circle, and the circle is around the ox head, and it's around this, and it's all a bunch of stars. This is found in Israel. So, I'll have to figure, maybe. So essentially, next slide. There's a close-up look at it. So they were pretty accurate as far as I'm concerned. Keep going. This is another look at how that. I'm just so happy to have been able to brought to you the beginning of this. This is new. This is like less than 2 weeks ago. These decipherments started happening, and it's only taking me about an hour per line to line up the graphics. And that's only because I can see them. I've already plotted them out. We went through all those black and white photos. I don't know why I was doing that. I just did it for years and decades. And then I finally got to the point where I said, well, maybe I should try to apply it a little. And just time after time, there it was. No surprise. I said, I know where to find that one. It's right over here. What do I have to do? It's not there. So I keep on switching it around, turning it, and then finally it lines up. Well, maybe it doesn't line up exactly. I have to enlarge the scope of the inscription a little, or close, and then line it up. And so those are the things is that I'd say those people in those days had such excellent sight. Excellent way. They were reproducing the sky almost exactly. And what's amazing about this method that I'm introducing here is I can be able to tell you, I can fill in the blanks on these inscriptions where there's messed up inscriptions. I can tell you exactly what kind of character can go there, what it may look like, because I have examples from other parts of the sky. And so I find these by saying, I see that one there, I see that one there, and just fit these here. And so essentially I can make suggestions to these linguists and epigraphers and such, so that they can make the qualified decisions about this. I'm just a graphic artist, so I could try to philosophize about, try to say, this means this or that. No, it's going to take a lot of effort, and to do this, it's going to take engineers, programmers, huge amounts of graphic artists, linguists, scholars, historians. But basically, I got to tell you, the direction of this study is making an abrupt turn. It's not going this way or that way, it's going up. And it's time for the epigraphers to, they've been digging around in the ground for hundreds of years. They've been thinking about this. I think it's time to get their head out of the sand and look to the stars.
So it's like it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You start and it's hard, and then you start filling it in, and then it makes sense. So if you wish to contact Lance Carter, you may do so at lancecarter.com. And if you would like to see more shows of this type, you may contact us here at Technology Trends, P.O. Box 487, Mountain View, California, 94042. And thanks very much. This is quite an interesting subject, and you have a whole pile of books there. And for us
we'll
to
get
go
to those
through.
next time.
Next time. Well, thanks very much. And this is Steve Naj signing off for Technology Trends.